Good evening, Jet fans. Welcome back to the Gangrene Chronicles channel. Yes, we are back for one of these pain therapy streams. Also, you guys get to ask questions, the Q&A session, of course, for you guys. Jets lose yesterday, 23-10 to the Baltimore Ravens in a very competitive game. Arguably a game that the Jets could have won, depending on how you feel about wins at this point in the season. With the loss, the Jets also clinched their 10th, let's try to figure it out, 10 straight losing seasons. We're going to talk about all that. We're going to talk about Aaron Glenn, Tyrod Taylor, rest of the team, the defense, which I thought played well yesterday. Situationally, obviously, coming out of the half, I think they ended up giving up a touchdown. There's some crucial penalties there. But regardless, if you guys haven't already, which is in the ticker, thank you so much for supporting the channel. If you guys haven't already, hit the like button, subscribe, turn on the notification bell so you know when I go live or drop a new video. And I'd also like to say to you guys, since it is the week, I'd like to wish you all a very happy Thanksgiving, happy holidays, even if you don't celebrate Thanksgiving. Thankfully, it's another year that the New York Jets do not play on Thanksgiving. Obviously, remember what happened on Thanksgiving 13 years ago. We are not going to talk about that. But regardless, what's up to Eagle Fang? He says, hey, Gangrene Chronicles, I'm hearing the Jets are getting better, but the thing for me is you can't get any worse than rock bottom. Well, question is, what do you evaluate as rock bottom? What was I going to say? I just lost my train of thought for a second. But rock bottom, I would say was middle of this year. You can again. I don't know if I've said it on here, but you can always get worse. When you don't think you can, it can always get worse. And that's not like me crapping on the team. That's just a thing in general. Sometimes it could be for life as well if you're really down bad. But it looks like everybody, for the most part, is full tank ahead. Now, obviously, there's some people who value wins out there, which I completely understand. I'm just going to change the background real quick. Give me 1 second. Sorry about that. This new platform has a ton of new pages, different scenes. So I'm just getting used to it. I hadn't used this platform being restreaming over about a year. So correct me with the mistakes. But regardless, it looks like everybody's tank ahead. The team is 2-9. They're on their way to another losing season. The Jets are, I believe, fourth in the draft order. They play the Falcons next week. I'm going to check who the Saints play in terms of the tank of all tanks. Let's see. Let's pull up the Saints schedule. Jets also play a very important game with the Saints down the stretch in December. It appears that they play the Miami Dolphins, and the Dolphins are looking to claw their way back into the playoffs. So I think the Dolphins will get a win. Then it's the Buccaneers for the Saints. Then you move down the line. It's Panthers, then the Jets. So you got about 3 more games before the Jets. And I know Eagle Fang is probably telling me, he's like, I don't know if I really want to draft a quarterback this, that, and the third. Everybody's for the most part, people are in tank mode. But I don't know if I said it last week. I said you could essentially do serious damage or provoke serious organizational incompetence if you decide to pass on a quarterback next year. Obviously, I mentioned last week too, and I apologize if I'm repeating the same thing. You don't want to draft a quarterback next year. The year after, with a regime potentially on the hot seat. And it was an interesting discussion that Brian Costello was having with Frankie V, who we've previously had on this channel, and Ryan Sampson, who do a little bit of work with the New York Post. And Brian Costello mentioned, obviously, we have to be fair, to put our fan perspective aside from the tanking and all that. Costello essentially said that Glenn has to win games. And it's not like he's going to get fired this year. We all know that. The trades of Sauce Gardner and Quentin Williams kind of put that on the table. Aaron Glenn mentioned that it's, Woody Johnson even apparently said to him, like, he wants this to be a win now team, but it's not. Glenn told him it was going to be a bit of a process, despite Glenn saying early on in the season, we essentially want to be competitive. Listen, they've been competitive the past couple of weeks. They picked up wins versus the Cincinnati Bengals and the Cleveland Browns. Competitive all that. Win now, as Aaron Glenn said. But for the first half of the season, wasn't too great. Second half of the season, you could argue there's some development. The defense has played better as a unit, as a collective. It's like almost addition by subtraction with Quinn Williams and Sauce Gardner. As the right time, Thomas seems to be playing well. And some of the mistakes that I saw yesterday, I think they're mostly, and I could be wrong in this. I never have a green goggle glasses type vision. I always call it from the brain and what I see on the field. Some of the mistakes I thought yesterday were mostly being made by veterans who, either been in the league or they're not going to be here next year. Like Tony Adams missing tackles, that's not a surprise. Tony Adams pass interference penalty on Zay Flowers near the end zone, that was not a surprise. He should not be here next year under any circumstances. Jamie Sherwood played better yesterday. I think he led the team in tackles. Brandon Stevens got beat on a few plays. Harrison Phillips played really well. So did Jawan Briggs. I mean, Phillips has been a steady defensive line piece for the Jets. He's going to be a starter next year, likely, and very much so. Very much deservedly so. Jawan Briggs is going to be a rotational player next year. I'm curious to see what the Jets do at defensive tackle. Obviously, yesterday they had Mozzie Smith inactive. There's somebody else in the defensive line. That was Tyler Barron, who was inactive. He's basically unplayable at this point, but you're seeing little increments of development, and that's from the objective standpoint. It's like, oh, well, people are still not unsold on Glenn and this, that, and the third, all these different things. But there is some progress from where we were early in the year in terms of a lot of the outcomes. And yes, we were losing earlier in the year. We had 2 wins so far the second half of the schedule with in terms of competition. Like Dallas game was a blowout. Buffalo game was a blowout. For some part, the Bucs game was a blowout. For some part, the Dolphins game was a blowout. They are playing up to the competition more. I mean, yesterday, the Jets defense held the Ravens to 3 points in the half. Now, coming out of the third quarter, they made some dumb mistakes, which eventually led to the touchdown in which the Ravens started to pull away just a little bit. You had 3 key plays, in my opinion, which caused the evident change of pace of the game, I guess you'd say, or the momentum, you could say. There's a better term for that. You had the Tyrod Taylor sack, him taking a sack at middle of the field. Did not help matters. The Jets could have easily went up 10-3 instead of 7-3. Taylor he's somewhat mobile. You saw some design runs from him. There's times also where he sits in the pocket a bit too long. Let me say this. I don't think there's a major difference between Tyrod Taylor and Justin Fields. I thought Tyrod Taylor was all right yesterday. I don't think he did anything special. I think he got some of the receivers involved. A little over 200 passing yards, which is fine. It's like, okay. We saw Breece Hall get involved a little bit in the passing game. I think that's where he's really at his best. John Mechie was involved a lot. He got a touchdown. I think he's going to be a very underrated gem for the Jets next year. I think he deserves – I don't know if I would say he deserves a starting spot, but I think you could argue he can get one, a 3 or a 4. He has the talent. That's never been in question. It's just dealing with all the things he's dealt with through his career, whether it's the leukemia, I think it was. He tore his ACL, being traded twice, not helpful. But I think he's a piece for the future. Adonai Mitchell got some looks as well. He was targeted 7 times, but I think Taylor missed some throws as well. There was a certain play that I think Connor Hughes and Brian Costello mentioned that Aaron Smith was missed deep downfield. Regardless, Mason Taylor got a few looks as well. Offensive line played very well, largely, so that's a plus, especially with a quarterback who can throw a little bit instead of Justin Fields. It's funny because Justin Fields, the great Twitter account of Justin Fields Fan Club, was out there tweeting and talking about how if they sub Justin Fields in halftime, that the Jets would have won, which is a complete fallacy. But regardless, I talked about the sack at halftime, near halftime. You also go to the third quarter, the 4th and 2 decision. I'll be honest, I didn't hate it. I like the aggression. I could understand the mindset of, hey, you want to punt there, your defense is playing well, sure. And you have a really good punter and Austin McNamara, so that's understandable. Also as well, I could understand going for it on 4th and 2. That was just my opinion. I didn't really have anything against it. But if you're going to go for it on 4th and 2, You got to have your best running back out there. Why are you having Isaiah Davis out there? And the execution was piss poor. That led the Ravens to go down the field for a touchdown. Also, as well, Jets were driving. They've had a few good drives yesterday, to be fair. Brees Hall fumbling down around the 2-yard line. Would he have taken it in for the touchdown had he not fumbled? Probably. Not on that play, but probably the next play or two. But it's just those little mistakes that you're seeing with a very young team. And I'm not making excuses, it's just an overall evaluation. You're seeing a lot of mistakes with a very young team. They're trying to find their way to compete and win. There's a possibility they win this week against the Falcons. They looked like a beatable team. Obviously, Tank fans wouldn't like that, but just in overall seriousness and objectivity of a team that's trying to win games. Now, the offense, as I said, I thought it was okay. Defense, as I said, Thomas played well, Malachi Moore. Those are your pieces. Jarvis Brownlee, I don't know if he might have had a penalty or two, but I think he's definitely a work in progress. Brandon Stevens, I mean, he had a few good weeks in the middle of October, but I think he's reverted back to factory settings. I think he was beat by Devontae Walker in a 30-yard play. That could have been easily Tony Adams. But the defense as a collective played a lot better yesterday. And I'll say this, and this is going to could sound negative, but I think it's realistic. I don't think there was any coordinator advantage with Steve Wilks. So, and in fairness as well, Lamar was a little hobbled. In fairness, we got to look at it, but also as well, I go by the old saying, if you're playing, you're not injured. So the Jets did what they had to do. They held the Ravens under 200 passing yards. They sacked Lamar once. I think it was Jawan Briggs, the only sack. Could have gotten to him a little bit more. The Jets held the Ravens under 100 yards, excuse me. The defense played well. I think it was just one of those games where the little things, the little penalties, the little mistakes, a missed throw, a fumble, a certain penalty on a good play that brings the ball back. It's just one of those games where it's a mistake. They don't have the talent advantage. That's just my personal opinion, and I'm not defending Aaron Glenn. I don't think he said anything jarring yesterday, but at the end of the day, this is not a good team. This is not a good, and I'm not trying to flip the envelope or do a complete 180 from where I was, but largely you stripped it down. The defense, as I said, the defense played well. The offense with the pieces they had, I think, did all right, but again, it was just those little mistakes. Not to say we would have completely beat the Ravens. I actually expected this game to be a bit of a blowout, but at the end of the day, Jets competed. They lost. A lot of people are applauding for their effort. And we'll see what happens. As I said on Wednesday, I want to see where Aaron Glenn is at the end of this year to make a full evaluation, because the one thing I do not want to know or don't want to be clueless on is this guy ready to lead the Jets? Is this guy ready to lead a winning culture? Am I going to find that out by the end of this year? Because next year, you have $90 million in cap space plus all these draft picks. You need players to step up. You're going to draft your quarterback likely. So next year, it is these – you can't expect 3, 4, 5 wins. It has to be – you could argue even playoffs, because look at the Washington Commanders. I mean, it was Dan Quinn's first year guaranteed, but look what they did. And obviously they've been a train wreck this year. Playoffs is not impossible next year. I don't know what the Jets' schedule looks like. I think they'll be facing, if I'm not mistaken, the NFC North. Going to have the Packers at home. Going to have the Vikings at home. Going to have the Lions on the road and the Bears on the road. In terms of the divisions next year for the AFC, it's going to be, trying to do my math here, because we this year we played and let me say this, we've also played, guaranteed it's a bit of a mishmash division. The Bengals are on the downfall. The Browns suck. Although they won yesterday, which was helpful to the Jets tank with Shador Sanders putting on his uniform for the first time as a starter. Browns uniform gets a victory. So if I do my schedule right, next year it is going to be, it's about every 3 years. It's the AFC West. It's the AFC West. So it might not be as easy, but you have to make progress next year. You have to make progress. You're going to have the Chiefs on the road, Chargers on the road. You're going to have the Raiders and Broncos at home. For some reason, it almost feels like we face the Broncos every year. I think from 2020 on, it's like every year we face the Broncos, I think. I'm going to flip around my hat. 2020, we lost. It was Thursday night game where Sam Darnold had that 45-yard touchdown running. 2021, we got blown out by Teddy B. 2022, it was Zach Wilson versus, what was his name? Brett Rippon. We ended up winning by a hair. 23, it was Zach Wilson versus Russell Wilson. The Jets ended up winning. Played down to the competition that day. 2024, it was the Aaron Rodgers Bo Nix game where Bo Nix just was terrible, but coaching and the Jets' own mistakes and their inept offense did not allow them to win. It's a game they should have won, but regardless, we can't go back on last year. 2025, we lost, and we probably should have won if Aaron Glenn decided to have the Stones and bench Justin Fields. So you can't cry over spilled milk, but that's them facing the Ravens. What is up to Mike Moran? Nick Folk having the most quiet GOAT season for a Jets kicker in history. It's sad it is sad. It is sad. The special teams, I'll say this. I don't know if I said it last week. I'm going to say it this week. The biggest development in terms of a unit with this team has been specials. Whether it's returners, whether it's gunners, whether it's the punter, whether it's the kicker. Nick Folk, I think, is still perfect. If not, I'm not mistaken, from the field overall. I'm not even talking extra points. For somebody that's 40-something odd years old, that's phenomenal. I don't know if he comes back next year to see what this team can do. He's 41. But Folk being perfect at this stage of his career is not what I expected. 20 out of 20 on field goals, 15 out of 15 on extra points. You can't argue with that. That's just a wow. I forget. That's right. It was Folk versus the thicker kicker, who's now, I believe, kicking for the Rams. That was a good call. I've been critical of Muji. I've been critical of Glenn. That was a good call by the Jets to bring in Folk. I don't know if it's sustainable next year, though. For somebody who's 41, 42 years old, you don't want to have him out to be Phil Dawson. But regardless, it's been a very good year. Quite sad, yes, that he has been the Jets' best player along with Austin McNamara. But you could argue that the special teams has been the Jets' best unit this year. It has risen up, should I say. They've had a steady rise a little bit. Are they the greatest special teams unit in the league? I don't think so, but they look good. There's no doubt about that. Let's see. Thank you, Turkey Day, you too. The worst playmaking defense in NFL history when this defense goes on the field. Yeah, you're absolutely right. That is the biggest flaw with this defense. They cannot get a turnover. We brought in Andre Sisco, no turnovers. Brandon Stevens, no turnovers. I don't know how Azariah Thomas did. I could look it up. In terms of college, no turnovers. This team, it's sad that this team has one turnover, and that was on a fumble forced by Jarvis Brownlee. It was forced by Jarvis Brownlee, and that was that. You look at Thomas's. Let's try to load this up real quick. Here we go. Thomas at Florida State, 2 interceptions his entire career. Now, that doesn't obviously mean that he's a bad corner per se. I don't think he's as bad as tackling as Sauce, but you would like the turnovers to take an increase, especially if you want to be known as one of the better units defensively throughout the league. You want to make steps towards improvement. You want to show that this defense can be a winner. So that's something that's baffled me. And that was the thing last year as well. So that's not really changed, unfortunately. That has not changed, unfortunately, with the New York Jets is the lack of turnovers. And Black Friday, yep, when the Jets tossed I was there. I don't know if I've said it. I was there in the press box, and everybody just started laughing. And my old professor who used to work for 1010 Wins, he's like, only the Jets. Is anyone surprised? And I don't know if he's a Jet fan. I don't think he is, but nobody was surprised by that. Nobody, because it could only happen to the Jets. Minus 10 yards passing was my reference to it. It can't get any worse. The Jets will find it. That's true. Listen, can't agree. I can't agree more. I've never seen a running back get defended as much as Breece Hall for his massive fumble in the game that cost the Jets. It's not the first time. No, it's not. If you look at the past 2 seasons, Eagle Fang, he's had 8 fumbles in the last 2 years. That is jarringly bad. And guaranteed, yes. 2 fumbles this year. As I said to my brother yesterday when I was watching the game and whatnot, I was like, I don't know if I'm ready to pay this guy. Listen, the dude has the talent. He's got the spin moves, and largely outside of that fumble, which is in a vacuum, he played well, but also, which I think he had like 100 plus scrimmage yards. But that fumble was a big part of the game. That was a huge part of the game. So it's not like, oh, besides the fumble. Well, no, he fumbled. That was his fault. But I understand what he was trying to do. But at the end of the day, that's a costly error. And sadly isn't, as I said, not the first time we've seen Breece fumble. He's fumbled 8 times in the last 2 years. So I'm not totally ready to pay him. I might be in the minority. I am eyeing Jeremiah Love next year. Love, Braylon Allen, and Isaiah Davis. Let's roll. Maybe add a veteran running back or some stuff like that. They play the Dolphins. Yeah, I did mention that. Jets will draft a quarterback. I just don't want them to draft any of the first round. Now, I'll ask you a question. Listen, I personally think that Mendoza is the only guy that's worth a damn, drafting-wise. But if the Jets are not in position to land him, they're kind of screwed because this was, as people mentioned in the past, this was seen as a great draft class. Nussmeier, Dante Moore, Mateer. How many guys are you really hearing from? Out of all those quarterbacks, people are mentioning how Jaden Mayava is a late riser from USC. But a lot of these guys, which is a big fear, I'm assuming it's a fear of yours, Eagle Fang, and finding fear of mine too, the late risers. See, Mayava is a junior, so he could realistically declare for the draft next year. He's only 21. That dude's younger than I am. Mayava's stats as USC, 3,174 yards, 21 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. That seems fine. 288.5 yards per game. Obviously, we're not doing full-on draft analysis yet, so I'm not going to go a deep dive. But if the Jets aren't, it's troubling. It's troubling, Eagle Fang, because you look at the quarterbacks this year. Lenore Sellers could go back to school. Some people say Dante Moore could go back to school, but I think this is the best you're going to get out of him. Drew Aller's coming out, but he's going to be hurt. John Mateer, just so on and so forth. Nussmeier was supposed to be good this year. He's disappointed, and he's had some chaos with LSU overall because of the whole Brian Kelly situation. And Brian Kelly sucks. I'm saying that from a Notre Dame fan's perspective, but regardless, it's a risk because I mentioned earlier in the show that I would much prefer to draft a quarterback next year because I don't want a regime on the hot seat to draft a quarterback in 27. Unless somehow the Jets, either trade up for Mendoza with their future picks, where they hopefully they don't get shafted to the point where we have less picks. Well, we're going to have less picks to build around him, but you don't want to put him in a situation that Sam was in. Or Aaron Glenn is fired after year 2, and they say, hey, you know what? Let's bring in, I don't know, Mike McCarthy or some coach shakes free that we don't know about, and they have a proven resume to say, hey, you know what? You're going to be tasked with developing this quarterback. So it's complicated. It's a very complicated scenario. That's why I'm kind of rooting for losses at this point because I want Mendoza. The Jets need a quarterback. I don't know. I'll be honest with you, right? If they don't draft a quarterback next year, I don't know who they realistically sign because we talked about the details of the Justin Fields contract last week, where the Jets are going to be not next year. If they cut Fields, they're not only going to have his dead money, but Rodgers' dead money. That's $57 million in dead money. And I said, I will reiterate my words from Wednesday. The Jets should have taken Aaron Rodgers' dead money and not spread it out. Take it all in one year. You'll have more money the next year. But the Jets didn't do that, which was foolish. So there could be a possibility where Justin Fields is gone next year and you're having nearly 50, 60, some odd million in dead money. And that's not even just at the quarterback position. I'm sure there's like void years attached. And it was a horribly structured contract. Void years after the second year, nonsensical, absolutely nonsensical. But that's my worry. That's absolutely my worry because again, there's the one consensus guy is Mendoza. Everybody else, you do not know. That's the truth. You do not know about the rest of them. I spoke about that last week. Mendoza had a very good game against Wisconsin. Don't remember who he played this week, or he might have been off possibly. November 15th. Yeah, he played Wisconsin last. He's going to be playing Purdue this week. So I believe it's the final regular season game for Indiana and the rest of college football, really, in-state rivalry. But we'll see. I'll be also my magnifying glasses will be on in the playoffs. Let's see what he can do. If the team falls around him and he still plays well, then he's certainly the number one pick. If he doesn't play well in the playoffs, well, then I'm not sure. I'm not totally sure his stock drops because he's the only quarterback worth a damn, and that's a problem. So the Jets are in a bit of a conundrum. They're in a bit of a conundrum. Let's see. Muji has done well scouting for players, but the coaching has been abysmal. I can agree with that. I think the trades for Briggs, for Harrison Phillips have been really good. We don't know I think he got a very good return for the Sauce Gardner and Quinnen trades. It's just, we said this about Joe Douglas in terms of the Jamal Adams trade. Oh, he got 2 first-round picks, this, and this. Well, you got to see those picks hit. In fairness, Garrett Wilson and Elijah Vera Tucker, those picks hit. Although Vera Tucker has been injured to hell and back. Very good player when he's on the field, but he's just not on the field enough. But at the end of the day, it's about if you hit on the picks. As I said, I don't disagree with your sentiment. I think, as I said, Thomas, let me restart my words. I think you can look back on this draft class a little more positively. Arian Smith is largely an unknown. I think Mason Taylor is coming on a little bit, especially with a quarterback who could properly evaluate him. Armand Membu has played very well for a rookie right tackle. You have Azariah Thomas, who I think he's played well. He's a very tight coverage man corner. I think he's physical, good type of physical. Malachi Moore has played well. I said earlier this year with Malachi Moore that he would have to eventually start out. And as I said, I thought I was higher on Cisco than most, but he didn't play well this year before injury. Tony Adams didn't play well, which wasn't a surprise. He wasn't good to begin with. And I said eventually he'll become a starter as Malachi Moore, but he'll have to start out in some sort of specified role, some specialty role. But now that he's taking over as the safety next to Tony Adams, I think is an improvement, but also you could say that because of Cisco's injury. But regardless, as I said, I don't know if I've said it, I'd rather the Jets lose young and have young players making mistakes than some veterans who might not be here next year. And I think that's a lot of besides the whole quarterback talk, I think that's why Jet fans want to tank a little bit because they see a lot of players, 30-some-odd free agents who may not be here next year. Now, you could re-sign Nwangwu. Isaiah Williams is not a free agent for another year. Quincy Williams is a free agent. The Jets are not paying him as of right now. Tony Adams, I believe, is a free agent. He should go. I could be wrong on that. I'm going to check my phone for it just to get a quicker load. Michael Clemens is a free agent. He could go. Josh Myers, are you going to bring him back next year, or are you going to draft a center or possibly sign a guy like, I don't know, Linderbaum? Would he want to go from the Ravens to the Jets? How much is he asking for? All these different questions, because obviously the Jets have more than one hole, both offensively and defensively. They also need a guard. But if you look at Tony Adams' contract, he is a free agent next year, so let him walk. Josh Reynolds is a free agent next year. Tyler Johnson's a free agent next year. Alan Lazard is a free agent next year. So if you see young players playing well and they're winning because of those young players, that's one thing. If they're winning because of veteran play, like guys like Taylor or Justin Fields who are not going to be here next year, then it really doesn't mean much. I'm sorry. But if you're looking, like, here's another thing. People are mentioning the whole Brady Cook topic. I do think he should get some burn this year. Let's just say Tyrod goes down. Justin Fields shouldn't be seeing another game. He shouldn't. He hasn't played well enough. I don't like his comments post-benching where he said, that's life. Just sounds totally defeated. But partly you can't blame him, but he also got to play better. But if Brady Cook should be the quarterback from here on out. You see what you have in him from here on out. You want to evaluate all the young talent? Evaluate Brady Cook. See if he can play your system. And I'm not saying that he would be a starter, but a backup, sure. But I wasn't high on Cook to begin with, but you got to evaluate what you have. That's the idea. That's on Emoji. That's on Woody. Yes, in terms of the coaching thing, Jets have now lost 100 games since 2016. Good grief. That is a horrible stat. Sad fact, the Jets' last win, yes, it was in 1983. The last year they were the Colts, the Baltimore Ravens. They've never beat the Ravens in Baltimore. They lost in 2000 to the Ravens in Baltimore. They lost to the Ravens in Baltimore in 2019. They lost to the Baltimore Ravens, I think, like 2011 as well. It would have been 2 sacks. Oh, I saw that. Yes. I did see that. I was like, of course he missed the tackle. It would have been 2 sacks. Line drive. All Sherwood had to do was take a line drive and take Lamar down. That was a piss poor way to get attempt at a sack. That was bad. That was terrible. It stunk. I remember that because the Jets were blitzing. He had a free lane to Lamar. Nope, not going to do that. We got, Lions, Packers, Vikings, and Bears. How has AD Mitchell looked so far? I think, the production might be limited, but I think he's shown some, it's going to sound very silver lining-ish. He's shown some flashes because the good thing with Mitchell and Mechie, ironically Eminem, they can separate. The problem with the Jets, with Garrett Wilson, it wasn't Garrett Wilson's fault, obviously. The problem with playing guys like Tyler Johnson and Lazard and Reynolds, they could not separate. And I think this scheme does benefit the receivers where they can separate, where they can scheme guys open, specifically Tanner Engstrand. But they have talent to separate. These two receivers aren't bereft of talent. I think at his best, Adonai Mitchell's a very good wide receiver too. Probably maybe a better wide receiver 3, who knows? John Mechie, I think he's probably a wide receiver 3 or 4. But if you have a good collection of young wide receivers, let me say this for the record, this should not stop the Jets from drafting a wide receiver next year, maybe even 2. They need all the top-end playmakers they could get. Hell, maybe draft another tight end. Who knows? But I like what I've seen so far. I know the thing with Mitchell was against the Patriots, that was the drops, but also Fields didn't exactly place those balls accurately. That was the main issue. Let's see. He is Mevis. It's probably a scheme issue with Wilkes. Like it was here with Bowen, it's hard to get interceptions when you're constantly Yeah, you're absolutely right. I've said it before. Steve Wilkes does not give the defense a competitive advantage. And I should have said this last week. I've said this twice in terms of Twitter, X. Steve Wilkes is not a defensive coordinator. He is a coordinator that calls the defense. He doesn't create advantages for players. He doesn't. I would 100% be willing to fire him after the year. But I could very well see a scenario, unfortunately, where the Jets improve defensively with young players and they say, well, Steve Wilks needs more talent. Steve Wilks is only as good as you put the talent on the field, or the talent you put on the field. He's not a guy like Wink Martindale, who I think got shafted by the Giants. He's not a guy like a Jim Schwartz. He's not a guy. I would absolutely bang the table for Jim Leonard next year as a possible DC. But Wilks does not create any advantages. He's never been too special. And I was wrong on that. I thought coming from the Niners, the last team he coached on the defensive side, defensive coordinator, I thought it was like, okay, he held up the Niners defense post Demeco Ryans, post Robert Saleh. This guy could do good. Well, I was wrong. And now the Jets might need it. No, they probably need a new DC next year. So he doesn't do anything creative. It's all man coverage. It's all blitzing. There's nothing creative about it. There's no it's the most vanilla of blitzes there. It's the most vanilla of blitzes. That doesn't help. You can't risk the Jets, and it could be the same scenario next year with the Giants as what they had this year with Shane Bowen. Not saying it would be bad to the extent where the Giants are blowing multiple 10-point leads or double-digit leads in the fourth quarter because their defense. You don't want that to be the case next year because you could argue if the Jets say, okay, we're going to keep Steve Wilks, we're going to add talent on the side of the ball. They do both things. And then you're finding your way to losses because of the defense and the coaching. That would be grounds to fire both the head coach and the defensive coordinator out. So in my opinion, Wilks has to go. Glenn's not getting fired, but he could certainly fire Wilks. He has that power. And I think the problem, and we obviously saw, as NFL fans, we saw the Lions play down to the Giants yesterday with Jameis Winston out of all players. Alex, my brother, Big Blue, formerly Big Blue in the Bronx, was on a podcast with Will Carter, I think his name is, and a couple of Lions fans. They're like, okay, what do we need to look for in the matchup, whole preview. And they essentially said that Kelvin Shepard has been better with the Lions defensive staff and the team. The defense has gotten better. And the problem they pointed out was Aaron Glenn was stubborn with his scheme. So now, is it Wilks' defense that is being ran? Or is it a hybrid of Aaron Glenn and Steve Wilks where they're being stubborn? So that's a problem. That has to change. And even I think Aaron Glenn said yesterday he thought some of the calls. I don't know if this was. I thought this was about the defense. He thought some of the calls were like questionable. I swore he said something along those lines. So if he continues to hold his coordinators accountable as a proper CEO coach would, I'm not saying you have to completely look over their shoulder, but at the end of the day, as a CEO coach, you look at the offensive and defensive side of the ball, and you have to make changes where they're due. So Wilks, as I said, in summation, does not create any advantages. Yeah, that's right. The Jets don't have a takeaway in the States. Dante Moore is probably going back to Oregon, excuse me. Yeah, he would have been the second best quarterback to come out, and now he's not. So that's unfortunate. I wish the Jets took the fourth rounder. I mentioned the running back I wanted last week, Jeremiah Love. Absolutely, go Irish. There really is one quarterback that's draft class. I'm not sold on him, Mendoza, but if Mendoza falls, grab the best player or trade for more picks. The Jets need more players on offense and defense. I couldn't agree more. Personally, I would not draft defense in the first. You could argue even second round. Offense. High-quality playmakers. And you could argue, you could say, teams across the NFL develop all offensive players and defensive players in all rounds. That's true. But when was the last time the Jets developed a receiver in the middle rounds? Elijah Moore? That didn't work out for us. Stephen Hill? Denzel Mims? Malachi Corley? You could go on and on and on. Chad Hansen or Darius Stewart? I am 100% sold on drafting a receiver in the first round with one of the two picks. Got to go offense. Enough of the drafting defense in the first round. Enough. In terms of a bridge quarterback, their best option is Minshew, Kirk Cousins, I think, might be out there, but I agree with Minshew. I think he's your best option at the bridge. Jets will end up signing some garbage quarterback like, oh my God, please no. Don't put that into the universe, Eagle Fang. If the Jets decide to do, if they decide to sign Anthony Richardson to forego a draft selection, the entire regime should be fired on the spot. That would essentially be like, well, Justin Fields didn't work out as a reclamation project. Let's double down on the mistake and go with Anthony Richardson, another failed quarterback. Justin, yeah, they're sick. There's a good old phrase: 6 of the same, half dozen of the other. I know unpopular. The Jets need to trade their stars for picks in the offseason. If they can get good picks for them, wave bye-bye. Committed to the future instead of trying to rush the win now. I understand that perspective. What's up to Armand? Hope you're doing well. As I said to everybody, happy holidays, happy Thanksgiving. Mechie and AD at best wide receiver threes. You can find plays from the offense if you can find a wide receiver 2 and plug next to Garrett Wilson. I couldn't agree more. And listen, that's great because Mechie was a throw-in from the Michael Carter trade. Adonai Mitchell was the throw-in from the Sauce Gardner trade. So if you find roles for these guys, it's a win. It's a huge win. If they can be contributors as soon as possible, they have. Purdy has 3 interceptions tonight. At least he throws the ball. Good grief. I know Armand is notorious for not being high on Brock Purdy or the way that the Niners develop their quarterbacks or lack thereof. Doesn't believe that the Niners got enough flack for the Trey Lance pick. But that's his own thing. Jets would trade for Purdy. God help us. No, I would not trade for Purdy. Wink Martindale would be my first choice for defensive coordinator. My issue about Leonard is he's not been a DC. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. He's been a DC in college, but if you want to experience DC, I don't blame you. I think if you think about it, right, and the Giants, obviously is a whole different story. When he was with the Giants the first year, the Giants made the playoffs, largely in part due to him. Second year didn't go so great. Dable fired him because Dable was a major control freak. But the one thing was interesting, and now this could pertain to the whole city. This could pertain to the Giants just as a team. Excuse me. Authentic, I believe that's his name. I've met him on 2 occasions. He's a Giants content creator. He also does some work with the Maryland Terrapins, as in the college team. He actually had an interview with Wink Martindale. And as I said, I don't know if this is exclusive to the Giants or this is exclusive to just New York in general. He said he loved the New York energy and he loved the fans. That was probably more so as a Giants thing, but the Jet fans would 100% have his would 100% back Wink Martindale. I think there's enough success there. I think there's enough success there for Wink Martindale to be a Jets defensive coordinator. I don't know if he runs a 4-3 though. Let me see. Does Wink Martindale base scheme? Wink is rooted in an odd front blitz heavy system that focuses on creating confusion and pressure through deception movement. Well, let me say this. Steve Wilkes does not know how to deceive a quarterback. So while it features a base 3-4 look, incorporates variables from even fronts and frequently blitzes linebackers and secondary players, a key element is overloading the pass rush to create favorable one-on-one matchups to force O-linemen to be outnumbered. That was just from the AI overview. If he can run a 4-3 scheme, he would be instantly my favorite. I can't see why he wouldn't. I think you create similar advantages. I know, obviously, linebackers in a 4-3 and a 3-4 are different. 3-4, you're going to have outside linebackers, not ends as much. You're going to have 2 DTs in a 4-3 system. You're going to have only 1 in the 3-4. You could do 3-3-5 if you want, We have three linebackers. I think it would probably be, you could probably stick to say, hey, you want two linebackers, four in the front, and then five in the back, 4-2-5, which I think is what the Jets run. But I 100% be open to Martindale. I think he's shown you. Let's just say the Jets don't get the talent next year. He's shown he could do more with less. And I think Steve Wilkes is the polar opposite, where he does less with more. If Aaron Glenn looks up to the Eagles in terms of running the ball, maybe he'll also look in the second round for a quarterback like the Eagles did with Jalen Hurts. Chad Hansen, yes. I don't know what quarterback would be. Let me look at the college football rankings. College football, or I can say 2026 NFL draft quarterback rankings. And obviously, Senior Bowl is a big factor. I won't be there this year, like I was in years past. NFL draft quarterback rankings. Oh, Ty Simpson's another name, but the 1 year thing scares me. I mean, he threw 2 interceptions versus Eastern Illinois. That's a little concerning. I don't know why Draft Buzz has been at 1 and Moore at 2. I think that is fallible. You have Simpson, Moore, Mendoza, Nussmeier, Maeva, Mateer, Sellers, Klubnik, Levitt from Arizona, Diego Pavia. Yeah, that's when you get really to the back end. But a lot of these guys, that's the scary thing is, could come out 2027. Moore could go back. Nussmeier, see where he's at, because he was supposed to come out 2026, and Nussmeier's a senior, so he's going to have to declare. Not at the highest stock, unfortunately. Maeva can go back next year. Mateer, I think, is still very young. He's 21 years old, and he's a junior. He could go back. So it depends how high they individually view their stock. That's right. Mateer only played 8 games. I forgot about that. As a result, yeah, surgery, throwing hand. He's not coming back. He's not coming back. He's not coming to draft. He's not going to be drafted this year. Not in my personal opinion. Let's see. Chad Hansen, yes. Pull this down. I'm high on Purdy. My issue is Shanahan got saved by Purdy because he did not get enough blame for Lance like the Jets do. That's fair. That is totally fair, Mr. Armand. Totally, totally fair. But the Lions were able to – Lions. The 49ers were able to pivot. That's the lucky part. Sometimes it's be better lucky than good. They had Jimmy G, then eventually became Purdy, and so on and so forth. He hasn't won a Super Bowl yet. I don't know if he is the quarterback to win one. I don't consider him elite. But regardless, that is the situation with the 49ers, who are obviously doing a hell of a lot better than us. Let's see. Niners traded up and gave up 3. Yep, that's a part of the big mistake. 3 first-round picks given up to draft the bust, who didn't even play in college football that previous season because of the whole COVID thing. That was scary. Wink ran more of a 3-4. Yeah, that's gonna be interesting, because I don't know if Glenn has. Let me look at the Lions personnel, because I doubt they flipped personnel from Glenn to Kelvin Shepard. I think they run 4-2-5 as well. 4-3. Okay, I was close. If Wink runs the 3-4, kind of have to be out on him, unless he says, okay, I'm willing to do so. I'm willing to adjust to a 4-3. But to create those blitzes, and I'm not saying it can't be done with the 4-3. It's mostly done with the 3-4. You have more linebackers in coverage, because the Jets only play 2 linebackers for the most part. I mean, there's times where they throw Kiko Mauigoa out there to be the third linebacker. So you could run a 3-3-5 system and have one of them blitz, but it all depends on Wink. And I think Wink will be dying to get back into the NFL. I'm not saying he isn't enjoying his college days, but he loved New York from what I heard. So the Niners cost themselves a dynasty trading those first-rounders for Trey Lance. Could not agree more. And right now they're playing well. I believe they're beating up on the Panthers. They have a positive record. They're above 500. They're doing their thing. 7-4. What more could you ask for? But it's hard not to believe that the Niners. It's hard not to believe that the Niners kind of crunched their dynasty with that trade itself, and they're paying for it. Brandon Ayuk is going to be gone next year, so you have to really look at the offensive talent. If I'm not mistaken, no, it's either Ayuk or Jennings that's going to be gone next year. Could be both because I think Jennings is a free agent, and Ayuk I think is ready to get out of there as well. So contract drama. Yep, contract drama. Colts might have cost themselves 2 future first round picks for trading 2 first rounders for Sauce Gardner. Colts defense giving up so many passing yards. Yeah, that's that type of trade. Eagle Fang is usually made when either you're trying to panic, or you believe you have a very small window, or you're really, and it's along the same conversation. Whether you believe you can win now, which I don't think it's going to be sustainable in my personal opinion. The Colts. I think they have I think their defense is fine, but as you said, they're still giving up a lot of passing yards. And who knows, who's to say that Daniel Jones doesn't regress after this year and falls back to the mean? That's just a question I have. Like, I thought Baker's first year in Tampa Bay was a lot more. And listen, Jones is probably going to get to a Pro Bowl, which is fine. But I do think Baker Mayfield and Jones is probably going to get set to be paid what he was with the Giants, that $40 million contract. I think SpotTrack has him at like $47 million a year, which I think is absurd. I just don't think he's been consistent. I think he's been very good this year. I think this is his best year of his career, obviously. But I just don't think that I don't know if it's sustainable. And I don't think Giant fans, in my personal opinion, should have buyer's remorse or the inverse on Daniel Jones because he simply was not working out with he wasn't working out with the Giants, especially like 2019 he was good. 2020 he fell back with Joe Judge and Jason Garrett. Same thing 21. 22 he arguably won with little talent, which was a big testament to, I would say, coaching, Brian Daboll, Mike Kafka. But also here's another nugget from a Giants perspective. Same podcaster who was interviewing with Wink Martindale. And this wasn't so much, he didn't want to make it to be a news breaking thing, but a lot of people were talking about it. He said that Daniel Jones really succeeded with Davis Webb by his side. And Davis Webb was the Giants' third string quarterback that year behind Daniel Jones and Tyrod Taylor. So at the end of the day, they got rid of Davis Webb, who was a mentor, didn't really play. I mean, he played that last game against the Eagles, but essentially Davis Webb wasn't signed back. He retired and he moved to the Broncos, who's now the offensive pass game coordinator and quarterback coach. So they did damage to Daniel Jones there, but I'm not saying it's totally unfeasible. I'm not saying it's totally not his fault for why he didn't work out in New York. For Niners lead 10-3, Ayuk's going to be gone. The Niners voided his guaranteed money. There you go. There you go. Definitely an intriguing option for the Jets, but again, number one, what is he asking for? Number two, injury history is a big problem. And you know what? Honestly, you could argue, I mean, you could get one veteran receiver, possibly. I don't know if it's that great of a receiver room. The lack of games in the past 2 years scares me with Ayuk, in addition to possibly his contract demands. So that's something you can definitely pass on. Look at the free agents in terms of wide receivers. Mike Evans, I think he could be gone. According to what me and Bad Takes Brian, if you guys don't know him, Armin does. Big Bucks fan, a close friend of mine. We were talking, and I'm like, "Do you think Mike Evans will be back this year?" He's like, "Yeah, I don't think so." Could Evans retire? That could be possible. I mean, here's some other wide receivers besides Mike Evans, and he's also going to be looking for a winning team. Maybe he looks for one last hurrah. Christian Kirk, Deebo Samuel, Jacoby Myers could be an intriguing option. De'Ami Brown is more like a 3 or a 4. Adam Thielen, for the sake of a veteran receiver, but he's 35 years old. Marquise Brown, I mean, it doesn't really get that better. DeAndre Hopkins is 33. So you're going to have to find – I wouldn't mind if the Jets signed a sturdy veteran receiver. Like, if they signed Jacoby Myers, I wouldn't be mad. I wouldn't be mad. If they signed Keenan Allen to be a wide receiver too is that big body threat. I wouldn't be mad either with speed on the outside. Noah Brown. Let's see here. Juwan Jennings, he's going to be the market value projects him at about 17 million. I'm not sure if I would touch that. Marquise, let me see how many games Marquise. I feel like he hasn't played that many games this year. I could be wrong because I think he came off injury, Marquise Brown. I'm not sure if I would touch him with a 10-foot pole. No, actually, to my wrongness, he actually has played 11 games. 439 yards, 4 touchdowns. Meh. Doesn't excite me. I think he's got some solid production in the last. He actually had 99 yards versus the. He actually did not have solid production in the last couple of games. He had one good game, 73 yards and 2 receptions on the chunk versus the Bills, 4 receptions, 40 yards against the Broncos, 1 reception, 10 yards for the Colts, nothing versus the Washington Commanders. Everything was, it seems a lot of like front-loaded good performances, which is not a positive sign. So I wouldn't touch Marquise Brown. I think it's a suitable veteran free agency market, but if you want a high-end 2, I guess you would go with the draft. And again, as I said, there's suitable options, but for a wide receiver 2, if you're not getting like a Jacoby Myers or maybe even a Kirk, I'd forego it and go to the draft. Need the Niners to win that game for, yes, strength of schedule. Thank you for the mention, Mr. Eagle Fang. So the Panthers obviously can lose. Jets get the lower strength of schedule, so that would help along the way. So we're all Niners fans tonight. They're obviously up still 10-3. Davis Webb is making Bo Nix look better than he actually is. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. So I think he's been a big development. I mean, he was to Daniel Jones, and now he is with Bo Nix. Better off getting a wide receiver in the draft, in my opinion. I completely agree. These guys are free agents get overpaid all the time. It really works out for the team. I agree. If I'm being honest, I'm going to honestly go defense in free agency. I'm going to go defense. Safety. Let's see what available safeties are out there. And obviously, you don't want to overpay for one. Kevin Byard, Donovan Wilson, Harrison Smith. He's up there in age. I wouldn't trust that. Alohi Gilman. Interesting. Geno Stone. Cameron Curl. Reed Blankenship. Kyle Duggar. Jimmy Ward. Jalen Thompson. They're based off substance. I haven't done the full research. They look like solid names to add next to Malachi Moore. So I would consider that. Cornerback you don't need. Linebacker. Levante David's a free agent. I think he's a little up there in age. Same thing for Bobby Wagner. Demario Davis, I don't even know if he's still playing at elite level. I think that would be very interesting to have him come back for a third and final term as a Jet or as a tenure. But the Jets made a very a bad mistake. Just letting him go in 2017. Oh, wow. He is playing elite. 86.3 grade off of Pro Football Focus. 74 tackles. Wow. This dude almost seems ageless. He's kind of like a Levante David. Very Mario Davis has had. The Jets let him walk. Kenneth Murray, Caden Ellis, Matt Milano, Alex Anzalone, Von Miller. Anzalone mentioned by Jeff Vance because the Aaron Glenn connection. You look at defensive line, you got to look at interior defensive line. David Onyemata, Daquan Jones, to John Franklin Myers. I would definitely very much look into John Franklin Myers. DJ Reader, Larry Ogunjobi, Sebastian Joseph, DJ Wanham, Cameron Jordan. I think he's too old. Calais Campbell's too old. Sheldon Rankins. I don't think he would be that bad. I don't know how he's done with the Texans, but I think the Jets sorely missed him after letting him walk in the 2023 free agency period. Rankins, wow, a 78 grade, 9th, 20th in pressures. Sign up for that instantly. Imagine if the Giants. Imagine if the Jets signed Rankins and John Franklin Myers. That would be interesting. You'd be repairing the 2022 defensive line, just no Quentin Williams. It would be, and obviously Will McDonald too. And I'll say this, I'll talk about Will McDonald in a sec, but if you could have Rankins, you could have Franklin Myers be switching in and out as defensive tackle and defensive end on run plays. Jermaine Johnson off the edge. And this is when we get to my point. I don't think Will McDonald's a starter. I'm sorry. I don't. He shows up once. He goes off for one big game for like once every year or two or once, 1 or 2 games each year. He's not consistent. I'm sorry, he's not. I know Jeff Fields will say, he's got 7 sacks. Great. He had 4 sacks in one game. What's the rest of the production looking like? If it's a consistent basis where he's getting those 7 sacks, I'm like, you know what? This guy's consistent, but he's also terrible against the run. That's why I've said I hated the draft pick at the time and that he should be a situational pass rusher, pass rush specialist, whatever you want to say. You'll have Franklin Myers on the inside, Jermaine Johnson on the outside, Will McDonald outside on passing downs, Sheldon Rankins in the middle, or Juwan Briggs, or Harrison Phillips. That would work. But I don't think Will McDonald is whatsoever. I think he is very overrated by Jet fans. I'm sorry. I'll take Duggar and Curl. I mean, the Jets have one safety vacancy open, so they could probably choose one. I like to see what Curl. I know Duggar got traded to the Steelers. Don't know how he's doing. Realistically, I'll have to ask around. And same thing with Cameron Curl. I have to do a little bit of research. Why did Glenn not bring in any of his lines? I don't know. That is a great question because usually when a guy comes over, be it Robert Saleh was one of those guys. He brought some of his guys over, whether it was Ronald Blair, not exactly a ringing endorsement. Solomon Thomas came over. There's nobody from the Lions that came over. And let me look at the Lions free agents for you. Let's look at all the Lions free agents. And we'll see how many suit the Jets' needs next offseason or going into next offseason. Lions. Anzalone, DJ Reader, Khalif Raymond. I mean, he's more so special teams as I click out of the page. Let me pull up the tab again. Here we go. Lions free agents. Perfect. Levy and Wuzuriki, Roy Lopez, Marcus Davenport, and a bunch of guys who are just depth at the end of the depth chart. But Reader, Anzalone, and that's pretty much it. I don't know how much Anzalone is going to earn on the market as a main linebacker, but I think that's going to be very interesting. Let me look up Reader's stats as well, because as I mentioned, the Lions defense as a whole has played a hell of a lot better with Kelvin Shepard as opposed to Aaron Glenn. Reader, Pro Football Focus, 44th, not bad. 64.8, I'd say that's probably average. 60th in pressures, snap count, blah, 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 blah. So, any other stats? And he doesn't have a sack on the season, which is interesting. Yeah, I'd probably pass on Reader just off the eye test of the numbers, the basic numbers. But also as well, Anzalone is my main guy. That's probably it. Maybe there's another guy. Marcus Davenport, maybe, as their situational guy because you need to replace Michael Clemens. You want to arguably have 8 players that play well on the defensive line, and that's where it is. It should not be built on cornerbacks, and that was the Jets' biggest mistake, was building their defense on the basis of a cornerback or drafting them too high to where, like, okay, that's where the value is. No, the value, I would say, is in the pass rush on the defensive side of the ball. Edge rushers galore. That's why they ended up trading Sauce. Davenport, not enough snaps. Has not taken a lot of snaps, so he could obviously either be hurt or just having a very role. So I'll pass. Not a lot to look at. That's the scenario we're in. Let's look up Davenport's numbers. 2 games only. Injury reserve designated for return. That makes perfect sense. Previous season, he also played 2 games. No, thank you. Not even for somebody who plays on a limited basis or who would based on snap count. But let me see if there are other free agents available. Defensive line, linebacker. Let's slow this up. Cole Holcomb's an interesting option. Depends if the Jets resign Quincy Williams. D-line. In terms of center, Linderbaum I mentioned. Connor McGovern from the Bills. Ethan Pochich. Ryan Bates. Cade Mays. Austin Corbett. There's going to be some interesting centers in this mix. I think the Giants. Jets should definitely go with a guy like either McGovern or Pochich just off face value. Guard, the Jets could either sign John Simpson. Braden Smith is for some reason listed as guard. That's interesting. They could go with Pochich at guard. Tomlinson, he sucks. Isaac Semelo, Kevin Zeitler. I think Semelo wouldn't be a bad fit. Wyatt Teller. Those are some interesting options. So running back, wide receiver, tight end. Yeah, I basically went through all of it. If you want to go quarterback next year, Garoppolo as a backup would be fine. Trubisky, Case Keenum, he's a little bit older. Carson Wentz, I don't think he'd be that good, but I believe Marcus Mariota as a backup would be very good. I believe he'd be very good. But with that being said, we've hit about an hour and 6. If you guys have no further questions, I appreciate y'all being here. See if you can get some content out during the week. I apologize. I'm also, if you guys haven't heard, I'm also nursing a little bit of not going to say a lost voice, but a very sore voice a little bit. So I'm going to take the proper precautions so I can get you guys more content. And at least I want to be rather consistent, especially since my work schedule has been figured out. Regardless, guys, if you haven't already, hit the like button, subscribe, turn on the notification bell so when I go live or drop a new video. Just going to throw myself back in here real quick. Anyways, appreciate you all being here. Could do another one of those pain streams next week. Should be able to do that. But appreciate everybody's support. I'll talk to you guys later. And peace out. See you guys soon.